Suppose you buy a vineyard. From the road, the business looks almost absurdly simple. Rows of vines go into the ground. Grapes come out. The grapes become wine, and the wine sells for far more than fruit. But here is the problem. 1 hectare of vineyard in France can be valued at roughly 11,000 euros. Another hectare, growing the same basic crop in the same country, can be valued at more than 2.5 million euros. That is a difference of more than 200 times. The expensive land is not 200 times more fertile. Its grapes do not weigh 200 times more. And its owner does not receive 200 harvests every year. So what are you really buying? The answer explains why some vineyard owners are pulling healthy vines out of the ground, while other owners are holding land that behaves more like fine art than farmland. The first thing to understand is that a vineyard and a winery are not the same business. A vineyard grows grapes. A winery turns grapes into wine. A wine brand sells a promise to the customer. One company may control all three, but each stage has different costs, margins, and risks. If you buy only the vineyard, your simplest source of revenue is a grape contract. A winery agrees to purchase your harvest, usually based on weight, variety, quality, and region. Your income depends on the number of tons you produce and the price paid for each ton. That sounds predictable until the buyer decides it already has enough grapes. Vines are permanent crops. You cannot switch from Cabernet Sauvignon to wheat next spring. You spend years establishing the vineyard, and then your entire business may depend on a contract that can disappear after one difficult season. Starting from empty land is even harder. The ground may need drainage, soil preparation, and irrigation. Then come the vines, posts, wires, trellis systems, labor, and machinery. The University of California Cooperative Extension says installation alone can exceed $20,000 per acre, depending on the site and design. And the clock starts before the revenue does. Newly planted wine grapes are generally treated as non-bearing for about 3 years. Even after the first commercial crop, the vineyard may need more time to reach its intended yield and quality. During those early years, the owner still pays for labor, water, pruning, disease control, insurance, taxes, and debt. In other words, you can spend money on a vineyard for several seasons before it produces a meaningful check. Buying an existing vineyard avoids part of that waiting period, but it creates a different problem. You may inherit old vines, weak irrigation, missing plants, soil disease, deferred maintenance, or a grape variety the market no longer wants. The green rows can look healthy from a distance, while the economics underneath them are already dead. Now imagine that your vineyard does produce a full crop. The money can move through the business in 2 very different ways. The first model is agriculture. You harvest grapes and sell them to somebody else. It is simpler, but your margin can be thin. The winery controls the bottle, the label, the distributor, and the relationship with the customer. You carry the farming risk, while somebody farther down the chain captures much of the brand value. The second model is vertical integration. You make and sell the wine yourself. That can create a much larger return per ton of grapes, but it also turns one difficult business into several difficult businesses at once. You need production equipment or a contract winery. You need barrels, tanks, bottles, labels, storage, and compliance. You may have to hold wine for months or years before it is ready to sell. Then you need distributors, tasting rooms, direct shipping, marketing, and customers willing to pay your price. A bottle may have a high retail price while the owner has very little available cash. The money is trapped in grapes, barrels, and inventory. This is one of the most dangerous illusions in the wine business. Inventory can look valuable on a balance sheet, but it cannot pay a bill until somebody buys it. And today, there are fewer buyers. The International Organization of Vine and Wine estimated global wine consumption at about 208 million hectoliters in 2025. That was another decline of roughly 2.7% from the previous year. The world's vineyard area also fell for a 6th consecutive year, reaching about 7 million hectares. This is not simply one bad harvest or one weak country. Mature markets are changing. Younger consumers often drink less wine. Economic pressure makes premium bottles easier to postpone. Competition from beer, spirits, and non-alcoholic drinks has expanded. At the same time, Producers still have vines in the ground, tanks in the cellar, and debt that must be serviced. When demand falls faster than supply can adjust, the pain moves backward through the chain. Retailers order less. Distributors reduce inventory. Wineries buy fewer grapes. Growers lose contracts. The fruit that once represented revenue becomes a cost that must still be harvested, transported, and processed. Sometimes leaving grapes on the vine is financially less damaging than picking them. California offers a clear example. The official grape acreage report for the 2024 crop recorded removals of more than 25,000 acres of wine and table grape vines during the previous 12 months. France went even further. The government created a permanent vineyard removal program with a budget of 120 million euros and support of 4,000 euros per hectare. By the closing date, growers had requested aid covering roughly 27,400 hectares. Think about what that means. Governments and growers were willing to pay to destroy productive capacity because, in parts of the market, another harvest was not an opportunity. It was more supply for a system that already had too much. But at the same time, other vineyards continued to command extraordinary prices. Official French land market data for 2024 valued a hectare of red Beaujolais vineyard at around 11,000 euros. Regional Burgundy vineyard land in the Côte d'Or averaged far more, and white Premier Cru parcels reached a dominant market value of approximately 2,550,000 euros per hectare. The crop is still grapes. The economic product is completely different. To understand why, forget the bottle for a moment and look at the map. Europe's protected wine designations define where a wine can come from and the rules it must follow. For a protected designation of origin wine, the grapes must come from the defined geographical area. Individual specifications can also regulate permitted grape varieties, production methods, and maximum yields. That creates something an ordinary farmer cannot manufacture: legally limited origin. If demand for generic grapes rises, growers can plant more vines in many places. It takes time, but supply can expand. If demand for wine from one famous, tightly defined vineyard rises, the map does not expand with it. The owner of land outside the boundary cannot simply print the protected name on a bottle. This does not guarantee profit. A famous designation can still suffer from weak demand, poor management, weather, disease, or excessive debt. But the best-known protected parcels combine three scarce assets: a physical location, legal permission to use a valuable origin, and a reputation built over generations. That is why their land can trade less like ordinary farmland and more like a luxury collectible. Now consider two hypothetical owners. The first owner buys 100 acres in a high-volume region. The vineyard is efficient, and the crop is large. Most of the grapes are sold through contracts to large wineries. During a strong market, this can be a good business. Machinery lowers labor costs. High yields spread fixed expenses across more tons. A long-term buyer provides predictable revenue. But the owner is selling a commodity. If the contract is not renewed, the grapes must compete on the open market. If the market price drops below the cost of farming and harvesting, producing more grapes only creates a larger loss. The owner has land, vines, and fruit, but no pricing power. The second owner controls a much smaller parcel inside a prestigious protected area. The annual yield may be lower. Farming may be more expensive. The owner still faces frost, heat, disease, and difficult harvests. But the wine can be sold under an origin that cannot be reproduced somewhere else. The buyer is not paying only for fermented grape juice. The buyer is paying for the name, the place, the history, and the limited number of bottles that can legally exist. One owner depends on volume, the other depends on scarcity, and both can still fail. Vintage wine estates showed how quickly scale can become a trap. The California Wine Company had assembled a large portfolio of wineries and brands. It went public, borrowed heavily, and tried to grow through acquisitions. But wine demand weakened, inventory became a burden, and the company struggled with its debt. In July of 2024, Vintage Wine Estates filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Its petition listed roughly $400 million in liabilities, and the company entered bankruptcy intending to sell assets. The lesson is not that vineyards are bad investments. The lesson is that valuable land, recognizable labels, and shelves full of wine do not automatically create cash flow. Debt has a schedule. Wine does not. A bank expects payment every month. A premium bottle may need years of aging and an uncertain amount of time to find a buyer. If too much of the purchase price is financed, the owner can be forced to sell the most valuable assets simply to survive the wait. So before buying a vineyard, the most important question is not, how many bottles can this land produce? It is, who is already committed to buying what it produces? You would need to examine the grape contracts, not just the vines. When do the agreements expire? Can the buyer reject fruit? Is the price fixed, indexed, or renegotiated every year? You would inspect water rights and irrigation capacity. A vineyard without reliable water can lose both yield and value. You would study the age and health of the vines, the cost of replanting, and the years of lost production that follow. You would ask whether the land sits inside a protected designation, what that designation actually permits, and whether customers pay a meaningful premium for it. You would separate the price of the land from the value of the winery, equipment, inventory, and brand. Sellers often present them as one romantic estate, but they are different assets with different risks. And you would stress test the debt. Could the business survive a weak harvest, a lost contract, and 2 years of slow sales at the same time? Because that is the real vineyard business. Nature decides how much you can produce. The market decides whether anybody wants it. The law decides what name you may place on the bottle. And the bank decides how long you are allowed to wait. At the beginning, we asked how 2 plots growing the same crop could differ in value by more than 200 times. Now the answer is clear. The cheaper vineyard is often valued by what its grapes can earn this year. The rare vineyard is valued by an origin that competitors cannot recreate next year. One sells agricultural output, the other sells controlled scarcity. So if you ever buy a vineyard, do not be distracted by the view, the cellar, or the rows of perfect vines. Find out which business you are actually buying: grapes, bottles, a brand, or a legally protected piece of the map. That distinction can separate a working estate from a very beautiful way to go bankrupt. If you enjoy seeing how familiar businesses really move money, subscribe. The next industry may look simple from the outside too, but the most important part is usually the part nobody can see.